Okay, so one of my favorite things to talk about has always been diversity and inclusion.
Yep.
Um, I know you are mixed,
Yep.
and I'm a minority. And I guess my question is, what was that like for you up until now? And then what's it like for you now, considering everything that's going on in the world?
So in terms of like my career path or people,
Uh, in terms of everything, I mean, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood.
yeah,
My father was a police officer, and all of my friends were white. So I think that's obviously had a big impact on my life growing up, and then also, just my thought process now as an adult. Seeing some of the protests and riots and things that are going on in the country. Um, so I was just kind of interested on your perspective.
yeah,
Um, what it was like for you.
yeah. I mean, I think being mixed, because my mom is mixed black with white, Native American. My dad is Middle Eastern and Portuguese, and you know, growing up, a lot of people really didn't know what like me and my siblings were.
Right.
So, and I think personally, like we moved a lot too. So I never really got stuck in one environment where I had to constantly face like the same kind of questions or same things or
Yeah.
whatever it was. So to be honest, like really growing up, I really actually never thought about race, like almost never. Like it wasn't until probably like late junior high or high school where there started to be kind of a little bit of a separation of like, oh, well, hey, like the skater kids hang out here and like, the athletes do here. Like it
Right.
became more of this like
It's
separate
really
thing.
segregated.
And then you started to realize like, okay, most of these kids are this or that. And you then had a framework. But like for me personally, I never really experienced a lot of racism. I didn't really think about race. It wasn't really talked too much about in our family. Like it just wasn't like a thing. And so growing up, I never truly like identified with one particular race.
Right.
But then as you get older, the world kind of decides that for you. So, if if you for me, I could say like if your skin's dark, right, then it becomes like oh, you're a minority. Like so, regardless of how you identify, you're a minority. And I would say that it became more apparent that like race is truly a factor. And so I think when people talk about things like white privilege, um, it's something that I think, at least from my point of view, I have maybe a little bit of a unique perspective because I spent so much time not thinking about race that once I had to then think about it, it made me kind of retroactively look back on certain situations and go, oh, like, well, yeah, I guess that could have been kind of racist, or I guess that could have been biased, like. But in the moment, the long term ramification didn't really affect me in the way that maybe somebody else who felt it or knew it. So, say for example, like walking into a store and someone like looking at you a certain kind of way, and you go like, oh, they must think I'm cute or something. I don't know, like you just don't think of it that way. But then you go, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm not like, and maybe they just think this guy's gonna steal something, right? But um, or let's say, yeah, applying for jobs, or let's say I remember vividly going into one like big corporation, and you're walking through the halls, and everyone is pretty much white, sprinkle a few Asians inside there, and like that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
So you then started to kind of pattern recognize that, like, oh yeah, like I don't actually look like a lot of the people here, although I've always been a person who I think is amicable to tons of situations. I've friends with every kind of person. But I think the perception sometimes is that would this guy and that girl get along? They may be too different. Or this guy and that guy get along? They may be too different. So I think even if it's not a racist thing, there is something about the idea of people having the perception that it might not be a perfect fit, or that you don't fit in, or you might
Oh,
not have fun here. So I think my perspective on diversity and all that kind of things is that um it's real. Like
yeah.
I think we all know that now. Like it's real.
I don't think everybody knows that.
Well, I think everyone, I don't think people gave it as much credence before. I think now with, camera phones and seeing what you've been seeing,
Right.
I think it's making people, even myself, realize this isn't just a story people like to tell, right? Like this isn't just something that like we want to complain about. I think I've never experienced like the extreme versions of what we're talking about. Um, but you can see very clearly how real those things are. And then when you look back at, say, friends, family, even yourself, like you can say, well, there is a certain pattern that's similar, and that feeling that you may have. And I think that's the one thing that um, I've never really heard a lot of people talk about when it comes to white privilege is this idea that it's the idea of having to factor in, right? So like you as a minority, you walk into a store, and even if you know yeah, I'm not gonna steal anything, I don't, I have enough money. It's
Think
just the thing. Yeah, well, it's just the thing that you have to think that then makes you take an action like that, that then is, you're trying to get a different reaction from. So it's like it's the full thought process of like, okay, I'm gonna walk into a store, and just to put somebody's, I'll take my hat off, or I won't wear it backwards, or whatever that kind of thing is.
right.
And you may actually not want to do that, or you may want to do that. But it's the idea of the having to have the thought, even if you never did anything. It's just the thought itself is enough because it becomes a thought. And
Well,
then,
here's a good example is I got a lot of buddies that, we talked about being pulled over in the past, right?
yep,
Yeah, my father was a police officer, but I was always taught over and over and over and over again, when I get pulled over, you roll down all four windows so that they could see in the back seat. You turn on all your dome lights, you put your hands on the wheel, and you shut the car off.
yeah,
And when I've said that to some of my other friends, they thought I was absolutely insane. Like, why would you do that? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, so I think that's a good example of just that. Whether you're walking into a 7-Eleven with a hoodie on, or you get pulled over by the cops, you kind of have to
Yeah.
think differently, unfortunately.
Well,
But it's
and I still think that those examples are still more extreme than the average everyday thing, right? So it's easy to look at, on one extreme end and say, oh, well, I mean, how often do you get pulled over in your life? How often are you like suspected of stealing? No problem. Those are extreme examples to illustrate the point that it goes so much deeper to like even the fact of the thought. Like I said, like I could be in a store, and let's say you're in like a Bloomingdale's or a Neiman Marcus, and you go like, yeah, you're obviously not going to steal anything because they have security everywhere and everything's tagged, right? But like, it's still the idea of, does someone think you couldn't afford something? Does someone think that like you might break I mean, it's just the thought of the thought.
right. No, that makes perfect sense. It
You
makes
could
perfect
be
sense.
wearing, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
but
know.
you could be wearing expensive things. You could have money. You could, like you could have bought something, but you still have the thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you have money and you buy nice things, and now you're a drug dealer. You know what I
And
mean?
and here's the point. That's another thought. So
Right.
regardless of anyone thought that, you walk into a store. No one thought that. No one, zero in reality, no one thought that. But the fact that you had to think it,
It haunts you.
it is another thought that gets added to the police thought, the stealing thought, it gets added to all this. So now when you go, now let's add up 100 thoughts. I think that's the thing I don't hear people talk enough about. It's like that we're looking at the moments, but what we're not doing is saying, if you took a year, 365 days, how many thoughts have you actually had like that?
A
Right
tremendous.
now it could be 500. So now if you
Right.
say to a white person, how many thoughts have you had like that? And it might be 100, I don't know, or 50, or who knows, right? So maybe in some people it might be zero, like where no one's ever thought you were going to steal anything, no one thought you were this, never had to deal with a cop. Like when you look at that kind of thing, that's a mind that creates a mindset, right? Like it creates a mindset that like, if I have to have this thought, it becomes part of my real life. And then when you add up all those thoughts, that becomes part of my mindset. And then when you take that mindset and you put me in situations, I'm going to naturally just be thinking in a different way.
Well, and I think that breaks it down absolutely perfectly, because the people that don't have to have those thoughts, they can't relate or empathize, you
Right.
know? Um,
Especially at that level of accumulation, because again, it's like saying, when someone says to an athlete, like, oh, look at this bum, he missed a shot. It's like, yeah, but you have no idea. That guy might have taken 10,000 shots.
he missed one. Right.
Right. And it's like, yeah, to you, it's one, but no, well, like, but you don't know the work that went behind that. Right.
Yep.
So it's to me, the accumulation factor of these types of things is so massive because again, we're talking 1 year. Now, let's say you're a 50-year-old dude. and this has been your whole life. I mean,
You're a
it's
little different, right?
it's
Right.
hard to quantify that and how
And you know what?
impactful that is.
I would argue that those thoughts are in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, believe it or not. You know what I mean? I mean, we- I own a pit bull. I'm walking down the street with my sweet little puppy. You know, I'm worried about how people perceive that. Do I look like a typical black guy with a pit bull? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
When I go and meet my wife's family for the first time, you know, she's white Italian. I think it's just something, you know, every day. And I agree with what you said earlier. I don't think it was something that was thought about when we were younger because it just, you know, it is what it is, right?
Well, and now think about this, right? So one of the other things I like to say is that is it's not even just the things that you thought, it's all the things you didn't know would have an effect, right?
Right.
So yeah, all the obvious things that you have the thoughts of and those hundreds of thousands it could be. What about the things that you didn't even really consider? So you look in a magazine, you watch a movie, you don't see anybody that looks like you or that talks like you or that comes from your background. You're not actually thinking that, but it has an impact,
Yeah.
right? Like, so it's like how when people say if you're watching a show, like you tend to want to identify with a character. If there's no character like you, then like you can still love that show, watch it, and it's no problem, but subconsciously, like it's not you, right? So if we're playing make believe and I'm going to be this person, it's just harder to do that. So all these subconscious and unconscious thoughts that you might have, added with the actual conscious thoughts that you have.
Yeah. It was harder to think that I could be the president of the United States before Barack Obama, right?
I mean, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. It's funny because it reminds me of like I remember having a debate with one of my friends about this. And he was very much like, well, Barack Obama didn't do anything for black people. And I'm like, he did the most important thing. Even if he never passed a law, even if he never got a legislature built, even if he never, did anything that like actually was impactful to a group of people, the fact that he didn't do anything to mess it up,
Yep.
right? Like to me, I think it's like imagine if the first African American president had done something crazy, had done a Donald Trump, had done something crazy. I grab him by the pussy. Like
It would never happen again.
you would never get in our generation, in our lifetime, you would never get another black person present again.
Agreed. The worst thing
Because
Obama did was wear a tan suit for Easter.
sure. And meaning if that's the worst, it's like, okay, no, that's the best thing he could. I mean, it's the fact that you can say, I put this guy in this position and he didn't mess it up.
Right.
And so it's not only just as minority kids looking up and going, I could be president. It's that I could be president and people might respect it.
Right. It
You see
might
what I mean?
actually.
Like, because the law can change, right? Like, I mean, Donald Trump can get in office and just change everything he did overnight. So, okay, he didn't do anything for black people directly, but the perception, the perception is so important of what he did that, like, he was a well spoken, educated, funny, kind, caring person. Even if it's fake, the perception that it was him, that shit is so that shit's so powerful. Like it's hard to even quantify how powerful that is because too often if he was this radical dude who was making all these statements or being angry, the fact that the dude was calm, composed. I mean, Jesus, like
It would solidify all the negative thoughts about, you know.
listen, it's like I can't to me personally like that kind of thing, like perception it's so important. It's so important.
And I think the same is for anything, right? For women, if Hillary was elected president, you know, if she had acted the way that, you know, others acted, you know, the perception might be that women are not stable enough to be in the office.
Well, and that's again, I think another point that you don't hear enough is that it's not just about people getting the chance. It's about the idea of like how is that chance viewed? Because whether you get a job, whether yeah, it's like I mean, how people will go, yeah, a woman can't be president. She's gonna get on her period and blow up the world. And it's like, come on,
Exactly.
like, come on.
Got the
Let's be
nuclear codes.
let's be fair, right? Like, you get upset if you lose at a game of Madden. Like this person's been, like in Congress and running. I mean, it's just not even a realistic thought, right? So, yeah, how you handle yourself and how you perform and how people perceive you is super important. And I think Obama, the greatest thing he did was just his
You
perception alone.
know what's sad is that, you know, I agree with everything you're saying. What's sad to me is the people who can't show any empathy, but I understand why, right? Like if it's something that if you never had to have those thoughts and you never experienced, um, any kind of, racism or discrimination in your life, I could understand why people can't relate, but I always think it's interesting. Like having this conversation with somebody who's never been in that situation, I would feel like I was playing victim, or you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
So
Yeah.
I was always fascinated by that because there are some people that get it, and there are
Yeah.
some people that just can't wrap their head around,
Well,
whether it's
and I think that's why you have to look at the commonalities in life. And again, a theme I'm always going to keep talking about is like pattern recognition, right? Because I mean, we could be talking about sports, we can be talking about politics, race. The idea is that the people who don't really get it, they just haven't really thought through the examples enough. Because I might not have ever been, an NBA athlete, but I understand that like they're probably not a bum. They didn't miss the shot on purpose.
right,
They, I mean, to become one of the best, call it 400 something players in the world, you're pretty good, right? Like
yeah,
you're pretty good. You know what you're doing. So again, the kind of the Monday morning quarterbacking that people do of like, why did this person make this call? Why, like, even in their mistake, they're more right than your opinion because it's
right,
just based in so much more stuff, right? So,
right,
you know, being able to understand that and say what it takes for Obama to even become president. I don't care what you think about your perception of these people or what they go through, or oh, they're just crying. What it takes to even get there
right.
and what you have to do to even get there. Like it's just not as seen. And so it's easy to discount it because you go, I'm gonna look at what he said in this one moment, but like it's all the moments that build up to that moment.
Right. I love what you said about, it's more the thought of having a thought. I don't know if I'm
Hmm.
paraphrasing that right.
Hmm.
But I love that because I think going back to what I was saying about, just feeling weird having these conversations with people that can't relate, I do acknowledge that a lot of those thoughts are just not accurate, not relevant, right? Like just because I'm walking down the street with a pit bull, maybe nobody thinks anything of it.
Yeah.
But it is sad that in the back of my head, that's something that I have to think about.
Yes, and that's why I think sometimes the best examples are to take it out of the context, right? So another perfect one is again dating, right? Like you may have a crush on a girl and you go, "Wow, like this girl's hot," and like she'll never go out with someone like me. And the whole time she's like, when you finally ask, oh, "Yeah, I wanted you to ask me out for like a year."
You're
Well,
like,
that thought you had was so real that you didn't take an action, and you lived with it. You go, "God, I really like this girl," and you felt that feeling, and you lived that life, and yet you were wrong, right? But it doesn't mean the feeling was wrong. It doesn't mean the feeling wasn't real. So just like racism, it's like if you have to walk down the street with the dog, no one could be thinking anything. But the fact that you actually think it's still real because you're still living it. You're still living the thought.
that's interesting. That's yeah, it kind of makes you rethink a lot because we've all been in that situation, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the thing. I think these type of examples have to be made in ways that not only people can understand, but that actually relate. And we all know that not every thought that we have, and people tell us like, you go, oh, I don't know if I look right. No, you look great. Like you dress perfectly, but people still judge themselves and go, no, I don't know. I think people are looking at me. And
Being on
then you
camera,
can
being
ask, yeah,
recorded, right?
exactly. You can ask a million times and they go, no, like, I think, I don't know. That's your own personal thing, but it doesn't mean it's not real. It
Right.
doesn't mean it's not real. So the whole world goes, no, no, dude, you look fine. Dude, no, no, you look fine. Or the girl goes, yeah, I really wanted you to ask me out. Or the person goes, no, I didn't think anything about the pit bull. But at the end of the day, the thought was real. You actually lived it, and it actually affected your behavior and your mindset. And the collection of those thoughts is massive.
And I think there's reasons why you have those thoughts, right? Like you don't just have them for no reason.
Right.
Uh, and that could be right?
Yep.
Like you might need to do a little self-reflecting and figure out why you're thinking that way.
Yep.
Or it could be the other person reflecting that on you. The girl really acting like she's not that interested when
Yeah.
in reality she is.
Or maybe the 10 girls that you asked out before that acted in similar ways
Mhm.
that then make you think, oh, she's not interested. But
Maybe
maybe
I'm
that's her like her way of being coy or being kind of like playful. Like
cool.
we
Right.
don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
So it's just the idea that again, the thought is real to you and you have to live with that thought, regardless if it's real to the other person. Because the person can go, God, when's he gonna ask me out?
Right.
And
That's
that's
interesting.
reality too.
So maybe we should start asking, you know? When I walk into a store, I'll just ask, "Hey, am I making you uncomfortable with my hoodie and my tattoos?" You know?
Sure. I mean, again,
Walking down
if
the
you're
street,
able,
"Are you nervous?" You know?
yeah. Well, I
I'm
mean,
kidding. I'm kidding, by the way, but
hey, yo, you nervous?
you're right.
Yeah.
You
I
scared
mean, but that's the thing, right? Like, they're just thoughts. The
right,
problem is, regardless if you take control of them or not, like it's the fact that you have them. And so now there's a possibility if you do those things, you might get annoyed that you have to do them.
right.
Right. I mean, so this is, with these types of things, it's just life. There's no real way to win because we never know what people are thinking.
Yeah,
We never really know. All we can do is am I doing the best thing that I think? Like, and how is those thoughts affecting my life? So if I go, hey, you know what, if I'm gonna have, a pit bull and a tattoo and a hoodie and okay, and a gold chain and
right,
demo tape in my, if I'm going to do everything, maybe I go, I probably, some people are going to look at, and if that, and that's fine. It's fine if
right.
I'm okay with that, if I really accept that. But if I really don't want that attention, well, then you're going to have to decide if those are all the things you want to do. But you can't change it anyway. You can't
Right.
change the perception anyway.
Generally speaking, stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, right?
Generally speaking, and
Generally
also
speaking,
your perception of the stereotype is your perception for a reason too. Like the
correct.
way you think about these things too. Cause like I said, like, maybe growing up, I never thought too much about race or, as I've gotten older, I think, another big difference that I've realized in my life is that I was always good at things like whether it was school or sports or girls. And so that gave me a lot of confidence and no one ever really like put me down or questioned me, right?
Right.
So a lot of people have the opposite where they go, "No, everyone told me I couldn't do this. Everyone laughed." And you go, "That get so just the thought of it." And some people go, "That motivates me," and some people go, "No, I can't do it." Right? And to me, it's like, okay, you could either be a person who, if you're told you're doing well at things, you go, "Okay, well, I'm great," or you can go, "No, I'm going to prove it to myself." So it's still just it's partly the world and it's partly your perception. They go
Yeah.
hand in hand.
And the beautiful thing is, the more we make those internal adjustments, the better off we are, right? And the more the world starts to think about it and have these conversations, just the better it gets. I mean, I think everybody would agree that things are a lot better now than they were 20 years
Well,
ago. Right?
yeah, I mean, there's no question that things are better now. But of course, there's obviously a huge contingent of people who still don't believe that fully, and they
Yeah,
think that things are worse than ever and everything's bad. But that's a personal perception. That's your feeling about what you think the world is, where it's going, and that's going to be
right.
based on your personal experience
For
and your
sure.
perception of your personal experience.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, me personally, my wife's white, stepson's white. We're gonna have a mixed child.
Yeah.
Um, that would not. I mean, that was illegal less than
Yeah.
100 years ago, right? So, I think no matter how bad things are, you look at the progression from slavery to integration to the way things are now. Things are getting better.
We live a very short period of time in a human life comparative to history. So it's
Correct.
very hard to like look back and go, yeah, what about 2000 years ago? What about 5,000? Yeah. Not only was it illegal, you would have been dead already, right? So it's like even going to jail for it is better than it used to be,
Yeah,
right? So
our
yeah,
generation has generally had to suffer nothing in
right.
comparison. You know,
Absolutely.
so
So meaning, yeah, it's hard for us to see history that way, but yeah, things are much better, significantly better.
I hope they continue trending in the same direction.
They will.
All of our sakes, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, man.